flag for me right there.
Yeah.
That said to me, this person should not be president. People have bled and died under this flag. People have fought for freedom under this flag. And for you to say, I don't want to wear it because I don't want to make that kind of patriotic statement, well, I'll tell you something. My thought was, I don't want you in our house. We don't want you living in our White House. And by the way, on the first Tuesday in November of 2012, we're going to serve him his eviction papers. And he can go back to Chicago or Hawaii or Indonesia or wherever he feels most comfortable. But he's leaving the White House.
Why can't we do it now?
He's leaving the White House. Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. Look, we have got to deal with this because we are facing a very, very horrific cultural situation. Now, look, it's not only race, but this president. Now, I know there's a lot of argument. Is he a Muslim? I can tell you this. He certainly does have a lot of affection and favor for Islam. That seems to be his priority. I've heard him talk about Islam in ways I've never heard him talk about America.
Yeah.
Well, Christianity, I don't even think about that with him. I really don't. I mean, that's a joke. Do you know what one of his biggest, most enthusiastic constituents is? Atheists. Atheists love it. Why? Well, Bill Maher said it. Bill Maher said, he said, well, he's moving to the center, kind of like he's a Christian. That's what Bill Maher said. I mean, Bill Maher likes him because Bill Maher said, he's not a Christian. I like him. I don't like Christians. I like him. But this whole Islamic thing of speaking to the Islamic world and bowing to the Islamic world and do you remember this statement? America is one of the largest Islamic countries in the world. Yeah. I mean, well, I'm thinking to myself, which America is he talking about? What, this one? Well, maybe he's talking about some other America included in it. Remember when he said, I've traveled to all 57 states?
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that was the one he was saying, one of those Islamic states he was talking about. But look, we are not an Islamic country. And anybody can come to this country and live out their lives in peace. But we don't want anybody coming to our country trying to convert it into some sort of Islamic caliphate or implementing a Sharia law. That is not what we want for the United States of America. People accuse me because I'm a Christian. They say, well, you want a theocracy. I do not. I don't want the government telling anybody they need to be a Christian, they need to be a Muslim, or anything else. I want every American free to choose. Now, as a preacher, I will certainly try to persuade you that Christianity is the way, but I don't want government involved in that. I want every individual free. In fact, God wants that. Every individual free to make their own choice. But what we're facing right now is a situation where slowly but surely Sharia law is creeping into our culture. Had one judge declared a guy not guilty even after he beat his wife because he said, well, he did that under Sharia law. He did that under the law of Islam. I mean, it's crazy. And that's where I think this president, given his druthers, would like to see us go. You know, he's made statements, said we need to make sure we implement taqiyya, that we honor taqiyya, which is Muslim giving. And a lot of that giving is directed toward terrorist-type organizations. And he wants to protect that. He said the sweetest sound he'd ever heard was the call to Muslim prayer in the evening. I mean, these are his words, not mine. And this is a Christian. I mean, you know, you'd like to hear him say, the sweetest sound I've ever heard is Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. But no, that wasn't it. Well, we need to stand up for who we are. This country was birthed in Judeo-Christian values and ethics. That's what our founding fathers, even the ones people claim weren't actually Christians, they made their reference to the Bible. I'm talking about Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin. They made reference to the Bible. And during the Constitutional Convention, Ben Franklin was the one who stood up and said, listen, every time we've had problems, we have turned to God in prayer, and we better start turning to God in prayer now. That was Ben Franklin. I say sometimes, you know, I take one of these people that they claim weren't Christians over some of the Christians that I meet today. Because that's who we are. That's where we come from. And obviously, we talk about culture. I can't leave this out. One of the worst things that this administration has managed to do, and I know that the Tea Party's focused on fiscal issues, but listen, we can't as individuals at the very least, I'm not trying to change the mission of the Tea Party, but as individuals, we can't ignore this. You've heard of the law of unintended consequences. Well, when they decided to turn the military into an instrument of social experimentation by implementing an LGBT policy for the military, they have begun to toy with one of the most important institutions in our culture, and that's the United States military. We don't know where this is going. We have no idea, but what we do know is this: that is a part of a political movement that is never satisfied. So the idea that we will simply implement a few rules and everything will be fine is nonsense, because there will be a push for more and more and more and more. And already we're beginning to hear backlash from it. We're beginning to hear people say, I don't know whether I can re-up under these circumstances. I don't know what's going to be demanded of me. Look, that's a political issue, and we can fight that out in our culture, but leave the military alone. Let them do the job that they're supposed to be doing of defending our country. Not playing games with them. And may I add this, one of the things I find most offensive is this notion of equating homosexuality with being black. Now, when I walked in this room, nobody had to ask a question about whether I'm black. But nobody knows whether a person's homosexual unless they tell you. And frankly, you're probably like me. You don't really care. That's their business. But this idea that it's like being black, when this is an immutable outward characteristic that says nothing about my character, and homosexuality is a matter of behavior. And by the way, for those of us who are Bible believers, we believe that God is right when everybody else is wrong. And therefore, that it is never right. It's never something we can approve, although we don't hate anybody, we're not out to get anybody or hurt anybody. And yet we're told, no, this is just like the problems that black people have gone through. Well, let me tell you something. I have heard of people who used to be homosexuals being delivered from homosexuality. I have never heard of one person being delivered from being black. That is not going to happen. But my point is, this is all an effort to transform our culture, and in fact, to use this president's words, to fundamentally transform the United States of America. And my friends, we don't need the fundamental transformation of the United States of America. What we need is for America to restore the fundamentals that made us the great nation that we are. That's what we need. Now, as you all know, and I talk about George Washington, this is wonderful that we're celebrating his birthday because he's my favorite president. And I love him because he had such a loose grasp on power. It wasn't something that he coveted. And he had come in an age when people coveted power. But he was an extraordinary man who had so much power thrown at his feet, but he never coveted it. Well, you also know that after the Constitutional Convention and they knew that they were going to need a president, everybody was pressing George Washington, and he didn't want it. Folks, I don't care what historians say about George Washington playing games and he was just playing coy. George Washington didn't want it because he felt like, I've served my country, I'm getting along in years, I love farming, I love Mount Vernon, I'd like to stay there. But they kept pressing him. And it was Alexander Hamilton and David Humphreys who urged Washington to accept it. And he finally did. Charles Thompson was the one who brought news to him on April 14, 1789, that the electors had chosen him as President of the United States. And this is what he wrote in his journal. He said, I bade adieu to Mount Vernon, to private life, and to domestic felicity. And with a mind oppressed with more anxious and painful sensations than I have words to express, set out for New York with the best dispositions to render service to my country in obedience to its call. That's where every single one of us is right now. Our country is calling us. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here. That's why I drove several hours to get here, because our country is calling us. Now, we're being called to different places to do different things. And some of you may have heard the rumor that I may become a candidate for the United States Senate. You may have heard that. If you haven't, I do want to tell you that is the plan. I'm not announced yet. I haven't filed yet, but that is the plan. There's a campaign committee working with me now to get everything set up for later this year. We're not in any hurry. We feel I've got a task that I'm doing right now called the Conservative Emergency Task Force that we're working with people. And I invite you all who signed up. We'll send you the notice, but we have a conference call every Tuesday on March the 15th at the Capitol. We're going to have a Conservative Emergency Leadership Summit. Michelle Bachmann is going to be there. Mike Pence is going to be there. Jim Jordan is going to be there. My Congressman Randy Forbes is going to be there. Alan West is going to be there. Yes. And a number of other conservative leaders. And let me tell you what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get all three legs of the conservative stool to hold together so that we can take our country back. So that we fiscal and economic conservatives and social conservatives and national security conservatives understand we're all fighting for the same thing. And we need to work with each other and cooperate with each other. You know, I hear people complain about the Tea Party. They say, well, they only focus on fiscal issues. And I tell them, listen, I'm a Tea Partier and I'm a social conservative. But right now the country is in a fiscal crisis. And the American people understand that when they may not understand other things. So we need to ride that right on into victory. And the Tea Party is doing the right thing. But we want to bring people together so that there's no sense that we're against each other, but rather that we're working with and for each other. And so that's what that summit is going to be about. So we'll have Mark Lloyd is going to be there, and I want the leadership. It is by invitation because it's not a mass meeting, it's a leadership meeting. And so it is by invitation so that we can make sure we can accommodate the people who come. But we want representation from this group there because we need to talk to each other and start communicating. And what we trust will come out of this will be a sense of communication and cooperation in what we're trying to accomplish. So that's what I'm doing right now. And that's what's most important to me at the moment. And a candidacy is something that will come later. But I will say this. When that time comes, I will not be running against Jamie Radke or George Allen or anybody else who may have been mentioned. I am going to be running against this administration and what it is trying to do to our country. I'm going to be running against the Obama agenda and putting a stop to it. And saying to people, it is not about the man's race. It is about his policies and his ideology and his philosophy, and we're going to bring a stop to it. We as Americans are going to bring a stop